your gold drink.
Mm-hmm.
All right. Pretty good remix. Hello, welcome to Question Block.
Hi.
This is Secret Loft's live podcast. I am Alex, Wires of NYC, although today dressed as Julius Caesar. And with me, my co-host,
Aerialist. And I'm on a moped apparently. I'm Cleopatra, the original cultural assimilator.
Mm-hmm. Yes, she was. What are you drinking this evening?
Something gold.
Okay. I'm drinking a gold soda, kind of influenced. It's like a beer. I'm drinking an actual beer with a raven on it.
Because... Oh yeah, we should help.
As you'll find out, in honor of the Egyptians.
Yeah. Ancient Egypt.
Ancient Egypt is our subject matter today.
And Ancient Egypt mythology and life.
The day-to-day life of an ancient Egyptian. Pretty cool.
Yeah.
So, yeah, how do you want to go about this? You want to talk about the archaeology and the facts, or you want to talk about the mythology?
Let's talk about the archaeology, like the facts, the geography more, I guess, and the time period.
Okay. So probably
Yeah, so I have some.
Yeah, I think there's three like key big picture things when you think about the Egyptians. So the first is that ancient Egypt is an insanely long period of history.
It's really long.
Everything else we've talked about on the podcast, when we talk about like the evolution of ballet, or we talk about like ancient Greece or like ancient Rome, those are all like at most 500 years, and ancient Egypt is 3,000 years of history, right? So it's like 6 Americas worth of history. It is like 4 of like all of Western Europe, Western history, like fits into Egypt. It was like that stable. So that's the big takeaway number one. Ancient Egypt is a super long time period. And then takeaway number 2 is that it's incredibly stable as a civilization. So like Europe is like, the history of Europe is constant wars, and like even the history of like Mesopotamia, which was close by, is like constant wars and overthrows and new sultans. And the Egyptians were like, with the exception of like, not too many other people, mostly ruled by themselves, not like invaded too much. And then 3, that's because of the geography, because everything about the culture has to do with the Nile River. And they lived along the Nile River, which is this like very steady, regularly flooding river that's great for agriculture, that cuts through some really serious desert. So not too many people could easily invade, because you had to cross a desert that would kick your ass, basically.
Yeah, and just everything, they were just like dependent on the Nile, like 100%. Like they used it for everything. They used it for, but also like they were agrarian,
mm-hmm.
which means they grew lots of plants and stuff.
And so, cool factoid, if you remember anything from this episode that you can say to other people, is that
agrarian means
no
agricultural.
With the length of how long Egyptians were around, was that right? Cleopatra is closer to like the modern day than she was to the pyramids.
I am.
So everybody thinks of Cleopatra as this ancient Egyptian like queen or whatever, but like that's recent history compared to when the pyramids got built. They are so old.
Yes.
Okay.
Exactly.
That's the big picture stuff. And now I'm not going to say a bunch of dates. We're going to try to give a...
Ooh.
What?
So, they did grow dates.
Yes.
So we can talk about dates like that in that respect. Okay. That was one of the things they grew.
Yeah.
A lot of carbs. A lot of stuff you'd find at the health food store. Actually, like the health food store. What do you...
Sorry, there's a fly.
Oh, okay. I thought you were like trying to tell me not to like talk about health food. Yeah, they grew like dates, apples, all types of grain, and basically like kombucha. Like, so I did some research on this. There's one person who said, like, one scholar or something that was like, yeah, Egyptians just, like, subsided on beer instead of water. But I looked further into it, and it's actually, like, it's more like kombucha, because the Nile it was toxic because they were, like, using it as their bathroom. So they were drinking kombucha all the time. Mm-hmm. Also, the Nile, it flooded. You said this too. Like, it flooded regularly, and that just, like, determined their gardening seasons and stuff like that. There were two parts of Egypt. There's Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt in the beginning, in the dawn of Egyptian civilization. But actually, it's like, if you look at it on a map, it's like reversed. But it's talking about the direction of the Nile. Like, it's in reference to the Nile, not in reference to, like, north and south. Fun fact.
So the Nile flows from south to north.
Yeah.
Because it lets out in the Nile Delta and into the Mediterranean.
Yeah.
So Upper Egypt is further south on the map.
Yeah. And actually, if you see paintings of, or I don't know, renderings of pharaohs from any time, like, right after the very dawn of Egyptian civilization, they often have, like, two crowns, because that represents, like, the merging of Upper Egypt and Lower Egypt. Before those two parts merged, I think the Lower Egypt had a purple crown, and the Upper Egypt had, like, red crowns in depictions.
Yeah. So speaking of their day-to-day, they wore makeup. You'll be a fan of this. They were not even ceremonially, both ceremonially, and they wore daily makeup. Apparently they had an orange kind of nail polish. This is like archaeologists take this stuff out, because a very helpful thing the Egyptians did for archaeologists is they
looked hot.
They built stone tombs in the desert, which, like, preserve really well. And they thought that the afterlife was basically a continuation of the current life. So they would put all the stuff you might need for your afterlife in the tomb, and then seal it up, like, inside rock in the middle of the desert.
You're hopping on my territory.
I'm just saying the stuff lasts a lot. So archaeologists are like, oh yeah, there's a whole makeup kit here. They must have, like, worn makeup.
Oh, they really had a makeup kit?
Archaeologists could be like, oh, there's a hairdryer here. I guess they, like, had hair dryers. Like, not actually, but that's, like, in part why we know so much about the Egyptians, and we know very little about any other civilization that was 5,000 years ago.
Oh, and also, I mean, we know a lot about civilizations that wrote, but they actually didn't write a ton, and maybe they did, but their libraries, like, burned many times. So yeah, we don't, and they didn't like to write a lot about death, because they were afraid about people dying, because they were afraid if they wrote stuff, it would come true. So yeah, a lot of their stories are told by, like, Herodotus, and he was, like, a lying ass mofo anyway, so we don't even know. We have to listen to.
But even when he came around, I mean, he was a Greek historian, so
lying ass mofo.
When he showed up to write stuff down, it was already 3,000 years into, like, ancient Egyptian history, right? So yeah, you talked about the unification of the two kingdoms happens in 3,150 BC. So, 5,000 years ago.
Yeah.
It's like when all these villages get basically taken over by a single pharaoh, and they have a single government.
Unified Egypt is created.
And then, because there aren't many written records, archaeologists sort of know the names of the pharaohs, but, like, basically 500 years passed in what they just call the early dynastic period. Then around, like, 2600 BC is the start of the Old Kingdom, which are the pyramid builders.
Oh yeah, and who's, like, the most famous? Well, who's, like, the first one?
So what is it, Sneferu?
There's Djoser, the first large, which is spelled Djoser.
All right, you're using notes. Fine.
Djoser.
Okay. What did he build?
The first, like, known pyramid. But they think a bunch of them just, like, deteriorated. People could have been building pyramids forever, but they just, like, were fucked up and died.
They just had bad pyramids.
Your pyramid's so fucked up, it need a pyramid because it's gonna die.
Yeah. No, who is it? Yeah. Oh, I just, you're right. Djoser. Djoser.
It's Djoser.
Okay. So after him, Sneferu was the next great pyramid builder. But he has, like, there's a story that he, like, started making a pyramid and then the outside casing fell off and he just abandoned it.
Oh, yeah. He was, like, he had, like, so much bad luck. Like, I think they tried 3 times for him. Mm-hmm. There were, like, yeah, and then his pyramids kind of messed up, I think. And then, like, it was literally, like, right before he died, they were like, oh, my God, we have to finish this.
So then his son, Khufu, built the Great Pyramid of Giza.
Yeah.
And then...
Oh, was the Sphinx around then, too? I think the Sphinx...
So one of Khufu's sons built the Great Sphinx.
What, are there people buried in the Sphinx? Or is it just, like, cool? They had extra time.
I don't think they found a burial chamber. I think it just was a giant, like, monument.
What was it supposed to be? They think it's like a Gryffindor, basically.
It kind of looks like a Griffin. I mean, it's sort of like a cat person, right?
Yeah, a cat person.
Yeah, it's probably, I mean, some god. I don't know that, like, any inscriptions they wrote on it, like, the museum plaque got, like, you know, washed away by the desert. Also,
what a dope name is Sneferu. Like, that's so cool.
Yeah. I mean, the pyramid, too, right? All of you see it today, and it looks rough. It's a lot of, like, giant blocks piled up, right? But it had, like, a very smooth outer casing when they first built it, and was possibly even painted. But, like, you know, 4,500 years will do that to your pyramid.
The sand blowing on it.
And thieves, constant, like, thieves stealing, like, stone off it or whatever else, because it's not like people in the Middle Ages, like, of Egypt, like, care that much about some guy's, you know, his tomb from 4,000 years ago.
What made people want to start building them?
So, I mean, Egyptian, like, civilization or their society was set up with the pharaoh, and the pharaoh was basically like a divine, like, deity, right? The pharaoh would become a god when the pharaoh died, and the pharaoh had to act like a god, and then the pharaoh's immediate family was very wealthy, and then kind of everybody else below that supported the pharaoh. There was a lot of fighting.
Can I argue? Can I not argue? Can I add, like, a little footnote to that?
What?
They would rather that you had royal blood than not to be a pharaoh. So, like, there were some, like, really, really rare cases where people did become pharaohs. Like, they became pharaoh because they were, like, related to a pharaoh, but they weren't, like, necessarily wealthy. Like, they would rather someone slightly poorer with, like, a pure bloodline be the next in line.
I'm saying once you were pharaoh.
Got it.
You were wealthy.
But that didn't matter, though, because they didn't have money or care about wealth, right?
Yeah, you just got to live in a cool palace and kind of, like, do what you wanted.
Yeah. And almost said pharaohism. Whatever, a pharaoh monarch worked really well because the Nile is, like, I just think of it like a big ass, like, runway that they would just, like, you know, could control. Like, they didn't have to, it wasn't like a spidery, like, twisty, windy, like sprawling city. It was just like a runway that they were just like, all right, here's my rule, let's go, you know?
Yeah, so before you had good communication, the, like, limit of any, like, large society historically is that, like, people need to know that the central ruler is, like, relevant and, like, possibly watching them and can enforce, like, the law. So when you had everybody living within a mile of the Nile and people, like, going up and down the Nile constantly, like, trading or whatever else, you were like, okay, like, you felt very connected to the empire, and, like, you know, in part that's probably why it was so stable. Whereas, like, a lot of other kingdoms got very big and then fell apart because you get these, like, rebel provinces or whatever that, like, break off because they don't feel the central ruler.
They don't feel it. You feel the power.
Yeah. But, yeah, so because of that, it's very easy to, like, regulate the people because everybody lives off of one road, more or less, which is the Nile.
This is true. But then like there's a moment. There's actually like 2 or 3 moments.
So there's the reason we called it the Old Kingdom, because then there was a break.
Yeah, a break. Little intermish. Well, they were conquered, or not conquered, but like there weren't any pharaohs in charge for like a moment. Because there was a famine and the Nile stopped flooding. So before, they just like throw some seeds and just like stuff would just grow like crazy. And then, and the Nile would just like water it and everything. And then like that didn't happen for a really long time. So there were years of famine.
They're not sure if it was like quarreling between the government or like, again, this is still like, what, 2200 BC or so? 2000 BC when it like fell apart.
There was a famine.
The power of the pharaoh weakened. Yeah, in part just like people, if there's only one guy in charge, people blame you when stuff goes bad.
Well, a lot of people died too. So like, just not a lot of stuff. Just people dying was going on.
Yeah.
People felt weird. They felt weird. They didn't feel like themselves. They were kind of hungry.
No, there's theories that it was also secession battles are happening. This guy's name is fun too. King Pepi II was like a very long-lived pharaoh. He ruled for like, he lived like 100 years, which was like unheard of.
What? I didn't know that.
You know about King Pepi?
No.
Pepi II is 2278 to 2184.
Oh, so it's
BC.
right. So it's way before this thing.
Well, around 2200 BC is the end of the first, like, the Old Kingdom.
Yeah.
And so, but anyway, Pepi outlived like all of his heirs, and so like even their grandchildren were like then squabbling over who would take over the throne.
Oh, I see. Yeah.
But you're right. Then also possibly a drought too. But anyway, the kingdom collapsed and it just broke up into a bunch of different like smaller local rulers.
So there's like that their intermediate period, and
just to be clear, like the major pyramids, all the like a lot of the stuff you know about of like Egyptian like giant tombs and all the amazing like stone carving stuff is already done at this point. Like 4,000 years ago.
The architecture and the hieroglyphics are from like that old period, but I think a lot of the pharaohs that people know are from the middle and the late period.
Yes.
So
yeah,
because I don't think anyone knows about
mostly because they got better at hiding their tombs. So yeah, it's like you said, a lot of the very ancient pharaohs from the Old Kingdom is that like people long ago then like dug up their tombs, broke into them over the ensuing thousands of years. Mm-hmm. So now we'll talk about there's the intermission of a couple hundred years, then there's the Middle Kingdom,
which is awesome, which is like the Nubian kingdom.
It is. That's
right. The Nubian kingdom.
So the Egyptians merge with the Nubians
the Nubians come over and
they're down south kind of.
They're like, this is cute. Oh. Hi, and they're like, okay, let's rule, let's like unify. And this was actually like a very chill, very peaceful period. So Menuhotep II reunited Egypt.
Okay, nice.
And then let's see, I'm looking. So in this like the intermediate period, right?
Yeah. And so this is when they established the Valley of the Kings, which is like famous archaeological site where a bunch of kings' tombs are in this valley. And then, later on, the French and British dug up a bunch of the tombs.
And they got cursed.
They did. We'll get to that.
Right? Isn't that why the Titanic sunk? Because they had some like mummy parts on it.
Tutankhamun.
Yeah.
Yeah. Okay, we'll get to that. Oh, and then we'll get to the whole mummy. People eating mummies and stuff back in like the Victorians.
I didn't know that. Oh my god!
They make medicine from mummies. There was like a whole secondary market.
Oh, mummies. They're going straight to like I don't know, a bad place.
Yeah. Wait, what else happens in the Middle Kingdom?
Well, I mean, it's like a pretty chill. It's pretty chill. Okay. Valley of the Kings, right? And then Western Asia, like what are they called? The Hyksos. They come in and they try to take everything over. This is really funny because they come in and they're like, okay, we're gonna like take you guys over, but we're gonna be cute and we're gonna like do your customs and stuff like that. And the Egyptians were like, okay, that's cool. Can you share your like military tactics with us? And they were like, oh yeah, sure. So they did, and then
I think were the Hyksos during the New Kingdom, or are they at the end of the Middle Kingdom?
No, they're right here.
Oh, in the second intermediate period.
Yeah. That's what so I got you.
The Middle Kingdom falls apart because they get taken over.
Yeah, but then they put that thing down, flip it, and reverse it, and they're like, we're gonna take, the Hyksos are like, oh, we're gonna copy your fashion and like language, and then the Egyptians are like, yeah, can we learn, like, can you teach us how to fight and like give us your weapons? Well,
yeah, the Hyksos introduced, they think, all of this stuff, by the way, subject to debate.
Whatever, let's say it's true.
But the Hyksos
who cares?
Introduced chariots and like compound bows.
Yeah.
And like Bronze Age technology.
And the Egyptians like learn how to use that shit and they use it to defeat the Hyksos, which I think is so dope. They're like the ultimate like, is that catfishing? I don't even know what it is, but it's cool. They trick them.
It's not even that clean a story because apparently the Egyptian dynasties continued while the Hyksos were in charge. So they like co-ruled even.
Yeah, because the Hyksos were trying to be like really cute and nice and the Egyptians were like,
Yeah, maybe.
They were like, okay.
Yeah.
That's fine. They formed a fake alliance.
Okay, so the Egyptians once again take control. It's now 1500 BC.
Yes.
So again, 1500 years have passed of Egyptian history while nobody else has a kingdom lasting anywhere close to as long.
Should we talk about how the Jew? Should we break it to the Jews? Because that has happened.
We can.
So
around this time, around 1500 BC, is when biblical scholars think Exodus is supposed to have happened, like the book of Exodus. But none of it is actually historical.
Yeah, so Jews were never even like in Egypt. Yikes.
Well, maybe like for trading, they probably like the Semitic people who lived in the Levant may have like made their way to Egypt to trade or interact culturally or whatever. But it's
pretty unlikely.
It's very questionable that like 2 million Jews were enslaved in Egypt who then left during Exodus. None of that adds up.
Yeah, because that would have like devastated their economy was it was an agrarian economy. They didn't value like money at all. They did have like servants and they did have like very lower class people.
The Egyptians had, like every ancient civilization almost, they had slaves, but generally they were like people captured in war.
Yeah, and they didn't really work on the pyramids that much. It was like you would be a farmer and you would have like a slave to do your farm work. From my understanding, the people that worked on the pyramids were like, they were like architects. They were kind of like a middle class.
So a lot of them were skilled laborers, and you would, like you were saying before, the flooding of the Nile governed everything about the rhythm of life, including like the 3 seasons. So when the Nile was flooding, which laid down this silt that made it very easy to grow plants, you couldn't actually work on your farm.
Yeah.
Like it was just all flooded. You could maybe repair some canals, but during that season, that's when like a lot of the farmers who were skilled laborers would have to go work on the pyramids.
Yeah.
Or other like works for the pharaoh.
Yeah.
So,
and because they found like meat in their stomach or something like that, and they were like, like a poor person wouldn't ever be like given meat ever. So
yeah, they found meat. They found the workmen who died while working on the Great Pyramid got buried nearby the Great Pyramid.
Which,
so they're like, oh, that's a sign of respect that that, like, and yeah, I mean they had like, I think they uncovered like they did have like a barracks or whatever you'd stay at while you were working there, but it wasn't like it seemed to be pretty well ordered in that like everybody had their own little bedroom or whatever space or whatever. It didn't seem like slave quarters, what they said.
Yes.
So according to the archaeologists, they think it was actually more just like if for your income tax, instead of just paying the IRS, you had to you had to go work for 2 months.
Like the Israeli army kind of.
Could be like the IDF or when the US had a draft, or like jury duty. It's like coming up for jury
pyramid duty. They're like, damn, I'm Grand Pyramid. Oh. They're like, don't worry, you won't have to do Grand Pyramid. You won't have to do it for another 8 years though.
Yeah.
They're like, that's half my life.
Yeah.
So like after this, the Hyksos are there. There's the reign of Hatshepsut, who's like the OG female ruler. Because like I said before, if you were a female, but you had a pure bloodline, they would prefer you to be a pharaoh than like a male with like a shittier bloodline. So Hatshepsut was like, she ruled for like quite some time, and she commissioned a ton of building like projects. Like she was like more ambitious than like New York with their scaffolding.
She was very she expanded the empire a lot too, but not through war, through like peace treaties and trade.
Yeah.
So she was also like a very skilled diplomat. And then of course like subsequent like male pharaohs then like went to war or like messed it up. But so this brings us to the New Kingdom.
Which is she is in the New Kingdom. Yeah. She starts it.
So she kicks off the New Kingdom, and around this time, we can start getting into the gods, I guess. Right?
Wait, no, we'll finish the history and then we'll get into the gods.
I'm saying like Tutankhamun.
Oh, not yet. So Akhenaten.
Okay.
He's the crazy one.
Yeah.
Yeah. So Akhenaten built a new capital named after himself, and he formed a new religion based around the sun disk Aten.
Yep.
And then he banned worshipping of the old gods. So basically, he combined himself with the sun god, who was like their main god, and he was like, yeah, Ra is out, or I think it's like Amun Ra is out, and it's me, basically. People were really mad. Like they were like, this like ruined them. They were so upset. And he was like, I don't care about it.
So his son, whose name was, I believe, Tutankhamun, basically was like, this is like a bad idea and seems unpopular. So he undid it and was like, no, we're bringing back the old gods. You don't have to worship Aten. And he changed his name to Tutankhamun.
Yeah.
And that's about all he did before he died, because he only lived to like 17.
Yeah, he had a rough life.
But the reason everybody knows Tutankhamun, and he's like the most famous ancient ruler of everything, is because he had the good fortune, I suppose, after he died, is that nobody found his tomb until some British archaeologists found it in like the 1920s. And so by the 1920s, when you had, the modern world, everybody was like psyched about like Egyptian culture and them finding it. Oh, yeah. So that's why he's far and away the most, and like, everything from his tomb was well preserved and could be brought like looted and taken to the British Museum. And so that's why Tutankhamun is so well known. He was probably a lesser pharaoh, although he did restore the old gods, which is pretty cool.
He was like 17, right? And I think he married when he was like 11 or something. He was too young to like take over the throne, so they kind of were like, well, your like sister can take over the throne and you can like marry her and be like a, He
married his sister. But also they were like, once you were, I think, like a teenager, you were pretty much treated as an adult.
Yeah. He had like a rough life though, because they said that he had scoliosis. Shout out to scoliosis.
He had a cleft palate.
Scoliosis.
And he died from either an infection or a broken leg.
Well, he already had a broken leg, and they think it was from like a crocodile attack. But they think he died of like a tooth infection. because they had really bad. His wisdom teeth were like coming in, and he just got impacted. They didn't brush their teeth.
They didn't have antibiotics.
And their diet was like so hella sugary and like carby and like and they didn't even drink like water. So it's like they're just like, yeah, just swish your mouth out with some like beer. Ugh.
Yeah, they did. From what we've read, it was like hippo attacks and like crocodile attacks in the Nile River were like common occurrences. And so like you did not go like swim laps in the Nile. Also, it was like filled with shit, but it was like it was the sewer basically. But also you used it to irrigate your plants.
Well, that's why. So like, if you remember from The Mummy, they love like scarabs. Remember like the sacred scarab? The reason why they love the scarab is because it represents the Nile, because like they would see the little baby scarabs like come out of their shit and they were like, oh my god, just like the Nile, like it's death, it's life, they're like, it's a phoenix, but instead of rising like from flames, they're like, it's rising out of shit.
Okay, so that brings us to the end of the New Kingdom, and we're still at like 1000 BC. We've already been through 2,000 years of like, basically like us to Jesus, right? We've been through 2,000 years of ancient Egyptian history. There's another 700 years of intermediate period where kind of various people invade, or there's not really a unified pharaoh.
They split up into two Egypts again.
Yeah.
And then Persia conquers and brings them back together.
Yeah, there's a late period. And then in 300 BC, there's Greco, and we're just skipping all this because I don't know.
Who cares? Whatever. It's not, nothing cute is happening.
So 300 BC is Greco-Roman Egypt, which is like when the...
Wait, do the Greeks and the Romans? Is that what...
Yeah, Greco-Roman Egypt.
I know.
They're conquered by Greek and Roman-ish people, right?
Yeah.
But also like the Ptolemaic Empire.
Did you say the Ptolemaic?
Yeah,
Ptolemaic?
Yeah.
The Ptolemaic.
I'm saying it for our readers.
Oh, phonetically.
Listeners, so it's phonetic. It's pahonetic.
I was just gonna...
Yeah. The Ptolemaic Empire then is like around this time. And so that includes the last, I guess, pharaoh of the Ptolemaic Empire is...
Ptolemy.
No, he was the first. The last is Cleopatra.
Oh, yeah. True. The 7th. Cleopatra the 7th.
Yeah.
Woo! 7! Yeah. Because there were like 7 other... Cleopatra was literally like Karen.
So Ptolemaic dynasty ends in 30 BC.
Yep.
Right? Which is right around when Jesus is born. But it's also right around the fall of the Roman Empire.
It's true.
Or sorry, fall of the Roman Republic, establishment of the Roman Empire.
Yeah.
The Roman Republic, death of Julius Caesar, all of that stuff you know from Shakespeare, or like, you know, movies from the 50s or whatever about Cleopatra and Mark Antony, are filmed in this time period now. 3,000 years into Egyptian history, where they're now like interacting with the Romans and the Greeks.
Yeah. So we'll talk a little bit about Cleopatra. Yeah, I was like... Hi on Twitch to Anna Chelsea.
Oh, I missed all the...
I was like, I have a feeling that like someone's trying to chat with us.
Oh, okay. Anna Chelsea giving color commentary.
Yes. I was like, I have a premonition. So yeah, Cleopatra was Macedonian and Hellenistic, right? And she was given a really good education, and she decided that she wanted to learn how to speak like 10 different languages, one of them being Egyptian. A lot of pharaohs didn't learn the language. They had interpreters. Like,
the foreign pharaohs.
Yeah, they had interpreters.
Nice.
So she was like, no, I'm going to learn how to speak Egyptian. And she was really into the culture, but in terms of like, being well-rounded, and like she really liked it. She adapted it, but like she didn't like exploit it per se. But there was like this really annoying thing with her younger brother, because they were like, even though he was younger, they were like, yeah, he can take the throne. And she was like, okay, I need an ally who doesn't like him. And that's when Julius Caesar comes in. So
Julius Caesar happened to be visiting.
yeah, he happened to be visiting. Oh, she was sort of like, I guess like slightly exiled from where he was. He was like in the capital, and she was kind of like in the suburbs because she wasn't allowed in the capital after they were like keep her away from her brother, so she's gonna try and kill him. Some accounts say that she snuck into a rug, and other people say that she snuck into like a laundry bag to get into the room with him. And she like popped out and she was like, hey, so you don't like my brother and I don't like my brother, let's kill him and then like take the pieces. And he was like, let's fuck. And she's like, okay. Yeah, and he basically slept with like everybody that he came in contact with. So when people were like, oh, she was like a seductress, I think it was just kind of like, it just was like a thing that happened. I don't know. I don't really think they were like super in love. I do think she might have like liked Mark Antony though.
Mm-hmm. Well, yeah, so she sleeps with Caesar, but Caesar is then a couple years later assassinated. And Caesar supports her claim to the throne. They kill her brother. She gets to be pharaoh.
They poisoned.
But a couple years later, Caesar is assassinated.
Yeah. There were tons of like killings in her family, like murderings. Mm-hmm. That was like a thing. Like the Ptolemies were like, I don't know. They killed each other a lot.
So after Caesar's assassinated, there were 3 different like claims, the triumvirate, like basically that all claimed power. And it turned out that it was Octavian like won.
What a good name for a villain.
But Mark Antony was also one of the triumvirate, and by then he and Cleopatra were getting together. So Mark Antony like fled to Egypt, and they tried to like hold out there, but it did not work. And so when they realized they were going to be killed or they were going to lose, they like poisoned themselves.
People think that they did. There's so many conspiracy theories like about it. Yeah.
I did forget, a crucial, like, fun detail, by the way, of the way she first met up with Caesar. The reason he didn't just stop by, I forgot this. He was on his victory tour, because this is after the Senate has declared Caesar an enemy of the people in, like, 60-something BC, or whatever, 55 BC. The Senate was like, Caesar, like, you're a general, you've gotten too powerful while you were in Germany as a governor, and Caesar, like, comes back to seize power. And he like gains an army, and he then basically like tries to hunt down the like people who would like turn against him, and he like routs these guys over in like Germany, and then like the other general who turned against him has meanwhile like fled to Asia, and Caesar like follows him, and is like trying to hunt the guy down, and that's actually why he was so mad at Cleopatra's brother.
Because Ptolemy killed him first.
The general he was trying to hunt down fled to Egypt, like gets beaten by Caesar in battle, flees to Egypt, and whoever the Cleopatra's brother,
Ptolemy, yeah, okay. They're all Ptolemies.
Yeah.
Cleopatra's like 7 moms of the past are like Cleopatra, and then like, there's like a million Ptolemies.
So he captures the fleeing general and beheads him.
Yeah, and Caesar's like, God damn it! I wanted to do that.
Probably not. Caesar on this, I know we're getting off Egyptian history, but Caesar actually on this whole campaign, and part of what made him so brilliant, is every time he would like win or be about to win a battle, he would show mercy. And then be like, if the troops I'm fighting, like, you're Roman citizens, I should be your, like, emperor. If you will just, like, rejoin the army, like, no one's in trouble. It's cool. You guys, in fact, I'll give you all pay for like
so he like looked like a good guy, but this made him look like a bad guy.
He consistently like was doing that, and same thing, he wanted to, probably what he wanted to do is bring that general back and like have a trial, but then like grant him amnesty or something.
Bring back my general.
Yeah, he just wanted to catch
he was
him.
Like, I didn't want to kill him. Why'd you do that?
So he did that with his other enemies who he like caught up to and beat down in Germany. He like showed them mercy, and they just got to rejoin and like have their lands back and everything. And he was like, well, forget it. And everybody was like, God, Caesar's such a cool guy. He's so great.
Oh, but this made him look bad.
Yeah.
Yikes. So they murdered Ptolemy. Ptolemy was like 9 too.
Yeah. So that's the speech in, Shakespeare or whatever. Shakespeare's like Julius Caesar or whatever. The whole eulogy for Caesar is that he really was a beloved, like really great guy when he was murdered.
Yeah, when he was murdered.
Well, it backfired on the conspirators. They were all then driven out of Rome.
We'll do a Caesar episode.
We'll do another one. All right, let's get back to Egypt.
Okay.
So, yeah, that's Cleopatra. That's the end of the Greco-Roman dynasty.
Oh yeah,
and that's really, we could call that the end of ancient Egypt.
Yeah, well, I think the end is when the library is closed because it burns.
When did that happen?
In 42 AD.
Okay. So.
And then Christianity, which is like the real end of it.
A little later, the Library of Alexandria burns.
Yeah.
Losing 40,000 to 70,000 books.
Yeah.
Yikes. And then 380, rise of Christianity in Egypt.
Buy all the cool stuff.
680, conquered by Islamic people. And then the West kind of loses interest. There aren't a lot of bullet points until basically 1800, I guess 1799, when the Rosetta Stone is discovered. And then because Napoleon and like the French Empire under him, Napoleon was fascinated by Egypt and the idea of a pharaoh. Napoleon was also fascinated by Rome and empires, but he loved Egypt. And so you're like, what were the French doing in Egypt? Napoleon sent tons of people there. So there even is like, this is probably not true, but people say that the reason the Sphinx's nose is missing.
Oh, because Napoleon took it.
Archaeologists think that it just like weathered and fell off, but like there was like a common like joke that like, no, Napoleon's troops like shot it off with a cannon by accident.
They were like, oops. Yikes, do you think we could like use Gorilla Glue for that?
They do. Well, different culture, but right, the Parthenon was blown up because they were using it to store gunpowder during World War I.
Okay, we're good.
Sorry.
Come on.
Anyway.
Come on now.
So
Come
Napoleon
on.
did, he financed a lot of archaeology and archaeological expeditions. And so among the French in the early 1800s was like an Egypt mania. And that's when people were like buying like ground up mummies, or like French tourists would go to Egypt. Yeah, and then later the British did it, and the Americans also like got very into Egypt in the 1920s, which is when The Mummy is set. I think that's supposed to be in the 1920s.
Really?
Yeah, the Brendan Fraser classic film.
Really?
Yeah, because they're using like little pistols and stuff. They're like, I'm pretty sure it's supposed to be 1920s. So it's right around when they found Tutankhamun's tomb.
Oh man, I love that movie. I know it's bad, but I love it.
Oh, and I will say the Rosetta Stone, the cool thing about the Rosetta Stone is prior to finding it in like 1799, nobody could read hieroglyphics anymore. And like nobody had any idea. And the cool thing about the Rosetta Stone is it was 3 different, I think there were prayers, like long prayers, and one was in ancient Egyptian hieroglyphics, one was in the Egyptian clerical script, and one was in like Latin.
Okay.
So they were like, that's the perfect translation document. It's just 3 different copies of the same thing.
That's cool.
And so they were able to linguists could use the Rosetta Stone to basically figure out what the hieroglyphics meant.
Oh yeah, because I read that a lot of the hieroglyphics they weren't like individual sounds. They were like pictures that describe stuff. It's
like a mix of, from what I understand, it's a mix of like Chinese and like Western languages, where there's like 2,000 unique characters, most of which stand for like words and can be combined together, but some of which are also alphabetical like sounds.
Yes, this is true.
It sounds terrible.
Yeah, I looked up like what it sounds like. It's very like
It sounds like whispering.
Yeah, it's like Hatshepsut is like shashasha. Like I'm not like, it's not that far off if you look it up.
Oh, that's funny.
Yeah, it's a lot of like shush. Babies would like it. It would calm them down.
All right, so that covers the historical stuff. If you weren't interested in the hard facts and history of historical Egypt,
I don't think these were hard facts.
You should have skipped ahead to this part of the episode, because now Ariel's going to talk to us about the mythology.
Yes, I'm gonna pull out my mythology like family tree real quick.
All right.
Yes. There it is. Oh, yeah. I actually took notes on this. So, in the beginning of time, there was basically like a pyramid-esque like shape thing, and there was like a lotus in it. And then out of like that, there were nothing, right? And then out of that came how funny is this, Atum or Ray or Amun Ra, and he's known as the Spitter, which also could be translated as like the comer, because he like, they say like from his spit, but like we all know what they mean.
Probably.
Or like his sneeze, that's like another, and we're just like Rosetta Stone translation. They think it's like the comer. So from him comes Shu, who's the life spirit, and then Tefnut, who's like the world order. And then they're like, let's go explore, and they go off and they like have sex, and then they give birth, and like, and this is like,
so it's a brother and sister. There's
these are all brother, all
like,
brother, sister,
so
everything.
It's Greek gods too. Same
all,
thing. Yeah.
But, but it's so much. I feel like there's so much like cattiness, and like, and we will talk about the cat goddess as well.
Okay.
So Adam, he also has like, he also has an eye, and he like he's like, oh my god, where are my children? And he like sends the eye like off, and Adam Ra, sorry, Atum Ra. So it's like Ra, the sun god, right? Okay. He becomes like the sun god. But he also has this eye, and you might have heard or seen like the eye of Ra, which is like the eye with the like sexy eye, right?
Eye of Horus?
There's also the eye of Horus, but yeah. So
okay, there's two eyes.
There's like a lot of eyes.
So keep in mind, this is like 3,000 years of mythology that is condensed down to whatever archaeologists told us from what they found. So
so like,
a lot of overlap here.
Yes.
Okay.
So he like
got the life spirit and the Tefnut.
Right, and then they have sex and they give birth to Geb, who's actually the Earth Father. Little gender reversal here, okay? Yeah. Not the Earth Mother, he's the Earth Father. And Nut.
Nut is the child of Tefnut. Newt.
Yeah, and Shu and Tefnut, they give birth to Geb and Nut. Geb is the Earth Father and Nut is like the stars in sky, and they're like, this is similar in Greek mythology where like they're like next to each other because they're just born, and like their mother and father are like, okay, you guys need to like separate a little bit, like middle school dance. So they like push them apart.
Put air between them.
Yeah, which is, it's basically like, she was basically like air as well. So she comes, the mom, like she's like, all right, separate, but they still have a bunch of children. Okay. So they have Osiris, who's the god of the underworld and the grain.
Osiris is green. I know that. He's the green
Yes,
dude.
I'm going to pull up like the pictures and everything so we can describe. Yeah.
It's the guy with the canes.
Yeah, so I'll tell yeah. So one of them is a cane and one of them is a grain.
Oh, a scythe.
Yeah, he's kind of like Demeter in a weird way.
Yeah, he sounds very similar.
He's like Demeter Persephone, right? And then Isis is the god. I'm wearing an Isis wing right now. They're like the belly dancing wings, and they're named after Isis, she has wings, and she's the goddess of the earth and the moon.
She looks like she can fly.
Right. They also have so Geb and Nut. They also have Set, who's the god of evil and darkness.
Yeah, Set is like the jerk in all the stories, right?
Yes, in this story, like the story. He's such an asshole. And then they also have Nephthys, who's the goddess of death and dusk. So there's a lot of their gods are like about the light. There's like,
Which is the one? Wait, who is Anubis though?
okay,
'Cause
so
Anubis is the jackal.
yeah, so there's Anubis,
Yeah,
and he is the head of the jackal.
cool. He's a cool looking
He
guy.
guides people to the afterlife.
That's right.
He watches over their bodies while they're mummified. He's kind of like a much cooler Cerberus,
Or
like way cooler.
he's almost like an embalmer, I guess.
Yeah,
Anubis runs a funeral home.
he does. Yeah.
Okay, and then who is the one that has the head of the bird? The ibis. Is that Isis?
So yes, that is Isis, and I will tell you why she doesn't always have that.
Yeah, there's different.
She doesn't always have that. Not yet.
Yeah.
This is gonna happen in the story that I'm gonna tell you. Okay.
Okay.
So this is the story of like the Osiris myth, right? It's really freaking hilarious. Okay, so apparently Osiris like kicked his brother one time, Set, right? And so Set's like really pissed at him, and he's like, I really want like his kingdom as well, so I'm gonna try and like take it over.
Yeah, through spite, all things are possible.
So he's like, okay, so I'm gonna throw my brother like a dinner party of like congratulations.
Nice.
And I'm gonna give him a gift he makes like he like secretly like I love this. He secretly like measures his brother's like dimensions.
Mm-hmm.
Which is like hilarious. Like just the thought of him like, you gotta measure all his dimensions, and then he makes a coffin that's like his exact dimensions, and at the dinner party he's like, okay, whoever can fit, it's like Cinderella, whoever can fit in here, like you get to keep it as a gift. Yeah, so Osiris like gets in the coffin. Oh, I should also say that Osiris has given up his immortality on accident. He like accidentally gives it up, and he's like,
oh yikes,
because whatever Osiris like thinks kind of happens. Like he's like, okay, I want some chicken, and then like chickens exist.
Oh,
you know,
pretty cool.
And he sort of like thinks up humans and mortality, and he's like, wouldn't it be crazy if I died?
Okay.
So he's given up his, and he's like, it's cool, I can just like manifest back more like immortality, and he can't. He's like trying to, and he's like, oh, that's fine, whatever.
Surely no one will try to kill me. Certainly not my brother.
Yeah. So his brother like, yeah, he goes in the coffin, and his brother's like, gotcha, bitch, and he like takes the coffin and throws it into the river, and Isis is like really sad, and she's like, oh my god, I can't believe that just happened. Yeah, and then like a lot of stuff happens, and then Isis like finds the coffin, and she's like, oh my god, like the coffin with my dead, and that's why he's green. That's why Osiris is green, because she opens it and he's green.
A little waterlogged. Yeah.
Yeah. And she that's when she gets Anubis. She's like, yo, help me bring him back to life. So they do a spell to bring him back to life, but he's like a weird zombie version. And then Set like finds out about this, and he's like, oh no, I don't think so, honey. And he cuts him into like 40 pieces and like scatters them everywhere. And that's why if you go to Egypt, there's like 43 like tombs for Osiris. Like they're like, this is also the death place of like Osiris, like all over Egypt. And so this weird, like Isis teams up with Set's wife. So I think of Set's wife is kind of like Hecate, like she's like, she goes both ways. She's kind of like, I'll help you. So they like find most of his body, but they can't find his penis. She's like, God damn it, that's the best part. And Anubis is like, yo, he can't fully go back to life without his penis.
Okay.
So like, yeah, so he's kind of just like a weird zombie creature. But he does, I guess he like he impregnates, like Isis is like, oh, I'm pregnant.
Yeah, I thought somehow they did find, there's different versions of this myth, by the way. And the one I read.
This is my version.
The one that I read, she did find his penis. and then had sex with him, or
She
fell
had
on
sex.
it, or jumped on it
She
while
jumped.
like mourning.
She's like,
him.
I found it.
Yeah. The one I read, she finds it.
That's the origins of.
There's another one where Anubis does actually just bring him back to life, and then they like have a kid, and then he dies again.
He's like, one more, yeah.
Yeah,
He's
one
like,
more bang.
One more bang before
Yeah.
I go. That's going out with a bang.
There you go.
Yeah.
So,
So she's like, okay, I'm gonna have this kid, and I'm gonna raise it in secret, and it's going to eventually like, it's like the Star Wars story. She's gonna like come back and like avenge the death. So that does happen, and that is young Horus.
so they avenge. Young Horus is the child of.
Yeah.
Okay.
And
Of Osiris and
Isis.
Isis.
And do you know
And
how?
then they overthrow Set by poisoning him.
But this is how he gets poisoned.
Oh, okay.
So, yeah, like, I think that, like, Set finds out about the kid and he's like, oh, I'm going to have another, like, weird dinner party at my house.
You know, the way I dispose of my enemies. I throw cool dinner parties and then trick them.
Yeah. So he's like, okay, making your favorite food. And yeah, so young Horus, yeah, he comes there and there's lettuce, right? There's like a lettuce, and a Horus just like jacks off into the lettuce. I swear to God. I swear to Osiris. And then, yeah, Set eats the lettuce but because, like, the jack-off has, like, life in it, that's, like, poisonous to Set because he's, like, death.
Oh, they got it down the road.
Yeah, so he eats the lettuce and he's like, I don't feel so good. And he withers. Which I think is,
right.
I just think that's so funny.
Yeah, go to a steakhouse and eat like a nice lettuce like wedge salad, and they just put the ranch
They're
dressing
like,
over
yeah.
it, like bacon bits. Yeah.
That's exactly what happens. Yeah, so I literally like rolled down the street when I heard, like,
honestly, you know, thank you viewers or listeners if you stuck around this long, but we should have started the show with that. We just made them listen to history for an hour. Matt, you had that the whole time?
Come let us.
Yeah, next time you gotta be like, we'll get to the dates later. Come on. Yeah.
We have to talk about this lettuce.
Yeah, that should have been the top of the show. I'm sorry. But,
yeah.
Well, that's fantastic.
I love how he's like, I'm going to serve a salad. The most delicious of the foods.
Do you remember, so they have, like in your research, there is, at some point, like when you die, there's like the Book of the Dead,
Oh,
right?
yeah.
And it talks about like, here's how you die. And then like, you have to like go on this boat and then do all this stuff. They're going to weigh your heart.
Yes, I have
and
that.
if your heart is lighter than a feather, then like then it's cool. But if, like, because we don't have heaven or hell, but if your heart is heavier than a feather, like a monster eats you.
Okay, I'll yes, exactly. That is actually, you did a great job. Real quick, the reason why Isis sometimes is like she's a bird head, because Horus, he's like mad before it's like he's having like an identity crisis, and he's like, why was like a fucking secret, god damn it. And she's like in disguise for some reason, she's like trying to be tricky, and he like cuts her head off by accident, and then she like turns back into herself, and he's like, mother, what have I done? And he's like and he like puts a bird head on her, and he's like, that'll do. Okay. He's like, I'm really sorry about that,
Horus
Mom.
himself also has a bird head, right? He has a bird head and like a crown.
He has a white crown.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. Horus just has a white crown.
Yeah, he is.
But he's
like a staff and an ankh.
Bird looking too.
He has the body of a falcon. And
clearly has a man's body.
And so he then becomes the sun god, because Osiris, like, he's like weird zombie. Mm-hmm. He's like the old sun. And then like, yeah, Horus becomes, and Horus also has like the Eye of Horus, which can act like independently. It has like personalities, and it like is mischievous. Like, he'll send it out to, like, do stuff, and sometimes it won't do the things.
To look at stuff?
Yeah.
To look at things?
Yeah. Yep. He'll send it out to be sneaky.
It's not like Puck. It's not like a fairy.
It kind of is, though, because he's like, come back to me, and it's like, I'm busy, shut up, no.
Yeah.
I'm looking at something right now. It's really cool. And he's like, can I see? And it's like, no.
No.
It's like, how dare you?
It's like, you're just looking at cat memes.
Good transition.
Mm-hmm.
Bissett is Carolyn Bissett.
Yeah.
She's the cat goddess, and yeah, she's really cute. She looks like a cat. She's worshipped. She has like her own. There's a town that like worships her.
So I think they've cataloged like 2,000. That seems like a large number, maybe, but of like Egyptian gods, there's like lots and lots of them. There's at least dozens.
Yeah.
And so every town and village had their own god too, because this was before professional sports. So like, if you wanted a cool like graphic design to put on your like t-shirt or like jacket, you could get your like local town's god. Yes,
there's a really funny one. It's like it's a crocodile god, and it's like their town is like Crocodiliopolis. I'm not even kidding. Like, that's the name of it.
We should go there.
Crocodiliopolis. Yeah. They have a mixed relationship with crocodiles. Like, this crocodile god, they're like, it seems like
they love them but fear them.
Yeah, and it's really funny because they're like, the crocodile god, they're like, he's impotent. Like, he can't make more crocodiles. He's nice and he can't have children. Ha ha. Like, but don't get mad at us, but he's hot. Like, that's kind of
because there is
the lore behind it.
But I think in the Book of the Dead, right, if your heart is heavier than a feather, the animal that eats you is a third crocodile, 1/3 leopard, 1/3 hippo.
Yeah.
And while it's a pretty like funny looking animal, but I guess those are like the three things that Egyptians feared most, like, right? Because like those are the things that if you like ran into it in the river or like, I guess out in the desert, it would kill you.
In the desert, the crocodile's like, ha ha, I'm here.
Oh, where are they running into leopards?
Oh, leopards?
Isn't that part of that like that little triple animal?
Oh yeah, I mean, leopards run into you, I think.
I guess. Happens. I didn't know they lived in the desert.
Oh yeah, you know that they
do a little more research on the Book of the Dead.
Okay, so no, well, you know what? It's not a book. Can I? Sorry,
yeah, tell
spoiler.
Tell me about the mummification process.
Spoiler alert.
Okay.
The Book of the Dead. It's not a book.
Is it a tablet?
Nope.
Is it a scroll?
No, it's like a bunch of like.
No.
It's a bunch of Wikipedia articles about like it's
a listicle.
Yeah, it is. It's like a bunch of like subreddits.
All right.
It's subdead. That's the.
Who was supposed to read the Book of the Dead? Was it for priests who were like trying to embalm people, or was it for like undertakers, or like were people just like reading this?
They were so it was just different like fragments of different rituals. So some of them might be for doctors, some of them might be. They really didn't like to talk a lot about like specifics. So these were about like the rituals and like the laws. Like, there isn't the reason why the Osiris myth is like so different a lot is because they don't actually like to talk about his death because they feel like that's bad luck. So this was like kind of more medical text. Like, some of it was medical text, some of it was like for a priest, but it was really just like I think like 50 different like scraps that they found, and then some of it I think was even dictated from like Greek people.
Oh, I got the name of that animal.
What was it?
Oh, no. So I forgot about this. The Egyptians had, in addition to all the gods, they had demons who are like lesser than gods, but like not human, and they live in the underworld, and demons are constantly like doing stuff too. So this god is Ammit, devourer of the dead.
Oh yeah, this is like in Charlie and the Chocolate Factory when like she's the bad egg, and then they're just like
yeah. So
yeah, they're just like boop, trapdoor.
Is a demoness with the
Ooh, demon ass.
so like yeah, 4/4 of a lion, hindquarters of a hippopotamus, head of a crocodile. So they're the 3 largest man-eating animals known to ancient Egyptians. And so if your heart is bad, she eats you, or eats your heart, I think. And then like you're stuck in the afterlife with no heart. So
well, no,
that was it. They're like, what are the?
You don't exist
They're
anymore.
like, what are the 3 things that can just kill you, like in the waking life? Let's make a demon out of that, and like, wouldn't that be scary?
So basically, it's really interesting because like it's reversed. So we're like, the soul lives on, right? I'm telling you.
I know, okay.
I'll tell you all the things that you need to
I
know
was
to die.
I was just trying to read about what happens if Amma eats your heart.
I know that though. I know. I'm explaining.
Okay,
I'm explaining that right now.
Okay.
So the Egyptian, it's important to know that like the Egyptians have the concept of the ka, which is the soul, right? And like when one of our people dies, we're like, their soul lives on, their body's just like, meh, right? But Egyptians reversed it. When you died, your soul would die and go to the afterlife, and without a body to like inhabit, it would just like go away forever.
So they had to, yeah.
So that's why you needed it's basically the body. They were getting it ready to like go find the soul, so the soul could live in it in the afterlife. And every night, the body had to come back to the coffin.
Oh.
So it had to do all these tasks. Is like they're like, okay, you have to prepare. You have to prepare for your trip, but every night you have to stop preparing, go to sleep, and then kind of like a vampire, I guess.
Okay.
Reverse vampire. Oh yeah, so I could tell you about the mummification. So yeah, they take your brain out and they throw it in the trash because they were like, yeah, they take a stick, they like put it in your head and they like stir everything around, and then they like turn your head and everything like comes out of the nose.
Yeah, it's like an egg.
Yep, it's like an Easter egg when you're trying to get
draining the yolk out of an Easter egg.
Yeah. Then they fill your skull with like tree resin and fragrances, but the fragrances actually, they probably had like antiseptic properties. And then they took your spine out, and they took most of the organs, and they put them in canopic jars. Everyone remembers the canopic. I think we even made our own canopic jars when I was in.
Wow.
Yeah, I think we
made our own sarcophagus.
Really?
Like out of paper mache.
You had to one-up me because you went to a smart school.
No, this is in 4th grade. So we made that.
Yeah, this was in 4th grade too. I mean, I'm like, we made canopic jars. You're like, yeah, well, we made a fucking sarcophagus.
I mean, you put the 2 together, you got a full tomb.
Yes. Okay, so then they put salt. They basically put the body in like an Epsom salt bath for like 40 days so that it like...
Yeah, you pull all the moisture out.
Yeah.
So it's not gonna... No, bacteria is not gonna get to it. It's not gonna rot.
Then they wash it. They put some makeup on it. They make it look cute. And then they wrap it. They wrap it in like gauze with resin glue. And they figured this out because at first they were just throwing their people into the sand, and sand actually preserves bodies really well. But they got scared. They were like, oh my God, they can't breathe, and the sand is going to fill their mouth and they're going to like have a panic attack. So they like
took... I think wrapping people in resin bandages is going to do.
But they like this evolved, right? Because it wasn't until like the end of the first, it was, that first period that we talked about that they started doing this.
Yeah, the pyramid builders.
Yeah.
Like, I need a cool tomb.
But it was that like evolved because at first they just threw them in the sand, which was smart. That would preserve them. But then they took them out of the sand and they're like, oh, they're gross now. And they like, they're like, what if we put them in a box and we put sand around it? And then it like... Yeah, it evolved into this, right? Okay, so the process is you would have like a like a instruction manual nailed to, it would be like your Torah portion, but like for death. So your family would be like, this is the Torah portion that we want like our mummy to read. So they would like nail that on the inside of your tomb. And the first thing you would have to like read it, and then they'd be like, okay, very good. You can move on to the next round.
Oh, okay. You had to recite something from memory, but if your family nailed it to your chest, then it was like there in the afterlife. So
it was like on the,
cheat.
I think it was, it was on the, they just put it on the bandages over your eyes. They're like, they put it on your hand. Right. So that was one. Then the next thing you had to go before like 40 different gods, I think. And you had to say that you were sorry for like 40 different crimes that you committed. Not like crimes, but like let's say there was a god of truth. You'd be like, I'm sorry that I lied.
It's like, we better get busy.
Right?
You have to commit 40 crimes. Yeah.
Well, yeah, you'd be like, God of truth. You'd be like, sorry for every time I lied. Like the god of like sex. You're like, I'm sorry that I didn't give my consent. Nice. David Ray Martinez asked how big our closet is. Well, we have a whole pyramid now to store our clothes in. That was really what they were after. All the other chambers, they were just closets.
Yeah, where you gonna store your lies?
Yes.
Your transgressions.
Yes. Oh, the funerary texts. That was the thing that they would put on.
It's a lot of work. So their like whole death process, like, right, and like in Christianity, like you die and you're like, you're done. Like you don't, no more tests or anything. It's cool. Like, you know, you're gonna get judged and get to go to heaven or whatever. Or either way, right? Like you already did everything during life. But ancient Egyptians, like you die and they're like, this is the start of a very difficult process. This is a very like.
Yeah,
a very like tough university, and you're gonna have to pass a lot of quizzes and a lot of tests. There's gonna be a lot of interviews before you want to get into the afterlife. And in the meantime, you're just sort of hanging out in your tomb, walking around.
So there's Mat, which sounds like a Chinese word, actually, right? And Mat is the goddess, and the feather. Mat. She's the goddess of balance. She's like a Libra.
Oh, that's the scale lady.
She's scale lady. She's also like Demeter, I guess.
Okay.
And she's the one who had the ostrich feather, and but it was like her feather. She was the feather. So that's where they would weigh your heart. Yeah. And then it's funny because like Osiris he was like one of the main judges, because he's like he's like not the sun god anymore. He's just like, yo, I'll judge. So when you say that you're sorry for all the sins, he's there and he's like...
Yeah, Osiris is like RuPaul during this whole thing. And like...
Yeah, Mott is like Michelle Visage.
Michelle Visage, or she's the guest judge. Yeah.
I feel like the 40, other gods, I feel like the 42 assessors of Mott, I feel like they're the guest judges.
The guest judges, sure.
She's like Michelle. She's like, it's not balanced. You're not proportionized. Yeah. I don't like this. You need to pad more on the bottom.
Okay.
Right?
Yeah. And then Ross Matthews is Amit, who is the hippopotamus, leopard, crocodile creature who eats your heart. If you fail, he will eat.
He's like, I get hard for the heart.
Oh, yeah. There you go.
Yeah. But this is, I guess, that's why they would put you with so many riches and stuff like that, because they really didn't care about like riches. They only cared about them for the afterlife. They didn't like mean anything to them.
Osiris. On the runway. Yeah, Osiris is the most fashionable god because he's wearing just full white pantsuit.
But he's green though, which they don't. Yeah,
he's kind of half a mummy.
It's camp.
Yeah, so that's a pretty deep dive into Egyptian mythology. Anything else we didn't cover?
Oh, the cat. Why they liked cats so much?
Oh yeah.
Oh, they loved cats so much that if you killed a cat, they would kill you.
Oh really? Cats were like sacred.
They were sacred. The Basat, the cat goddess. Oh right. So, but they were sacred because they protected the grain from mice and rats and flies and you would bring them to work with you every day because they would make sure that there would be like no rats in the grain. And families, if your household cat died, people would shave their eyebrows off and like to mourn.
To mourn the death of their cat.
Yeah, to be like the cat.
Yeah. So Egyptians loved cats. But yeah, as we said way back at the start of the episode, when you talked about how they were an agrarian society and they were all farmers. What's that?
See if there's more, because I know Anne.
Nope.
Yes, okay.
But he talked about they're an agrarian society, and that the fact that, being an agrarian society in the desert explains a lot about the Egyptians that comes from that. Because, like you said, they didn't have money.
They just had grain.
And my whole theory with that is they got really good at, their religion demanded they embalm the dead and get really good at storing bodies and preserving them. So they were good at salt and building dry storage chambers and whatever else. And probably because of that, it was really easy to store grain. So you didn't need money. If you're all farmers and your main produce is grain, you can just store the grain.
Yeah.
And then you just barter with the grain.
Yeah, everyone was they all did it. They all did it. There's you wouldn't need.
Yeah, and if everybody kind of has the same occupation as farmer, a lot of what you do is kind of just go to the market or your neighbors to trade my grain for your vegetables.
Yeah.
Or whatever. And so there was no real demand for money. There were no finished goods. I don't know who was making clothes, but I guess you would just give them grain or whatever.
You could make it out of the reeds or whatever. The
papyrus.
Papyrus. The funeral papyri.
But a big part of that is why cats are then so important, because cats are that's the thing that's going to protect your grain. That's your banker. Yeah. Is that you need somebody who's making sure you don't get mice. You get mice in the grain. They're literally eating your money.
Yeah.
So you got a big deal.
Yeah.
Yeah. And so they were probably in tandem. Yeah. They got really great at also preserving bodies because they were really good at preserving grain.
That's why Anubis had the head of a jackal, because Anubis, because he they would see jackals in the graveyard a lot, in the graves, not in the pyramids.
Trying to eat the bodies. Yeah. Or jackals eat any animal that dies out in the desert or whatever. Jackals are scavengers.
But they thought that they were protecting the graves from grave robbers.
Oh, that's ironic.
Yeah, so they were
no.
They were that he's helping them to the underworld. Yeah.
Got it.
And because they laugh too, right? Don't they laugh? Don't they have a crazy? Because they're kind of like hyena.
Piercing wolf-like shriek.
Yeah, it's like elephant graveyard, but different.
Yeah. So that's kind of it. I think that
right?
sums up the Egyptians, right?
Yeah, right.
No, it doesn't. There's lots more to learn. To which we would just direct you to go to the Met, because they have a great Egyptian way.
It's so good. The Temple of Dendor.
The Temple of Dendor, taken directly from the Valley of Kings, stone by stone, and eventually transported to New York City. Yeah. So you can go. You can't walk into it anymore.
Yeah, because too many people are getting cursed.
Yeah, I don't know if it's that or if it was COVID restrictions, but they at least now you just have to walk around the perimeter. You used to be able to go all the way into.
Oh yeah, my dad would take me to there when I was a kid, and yesterday, and we would actually do rubbings on the paper and the crayons, and we would do you could just get up in that
on the hieroglyphs carved into the Temple of Dendor.
Get all over it. Yeah. They also have sarcophagi that you can look at and stuff like that. Mm-hmm. A friend of the pod was telling me earlier, because she Kitschy, because she's been to Egypt before. She said that she went to a museum there, and she saw. She said that Egyptians were really into beauty, and so a lot of them. They would tell people who made carvings of them or paintings to make them look cuter. The original Facetune, basically.
Yeah.
And she said there were some in the Egyptian museums that they just were just carve me, I don't care. and they're just kind of like fat.
Wait, what? They're not face tuned or what?
They're like not hot because they didn't tell them. They like the person like carving them. They weren't like, okay, I want like higher cheekbones.
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes the artist just carves like an accurate portrayal.
Yeah, and but like I've never seen that in like America, but they're all like hot. All the like depictions.
Oh,
of them.
the classical statues that we have.
Yeah, and
Okay,
like
sure.
the like the likenesses. But apparently in Egypt, yeah, their secret is safe in their homeland. Oh yeah, and Cleopatra, it's funny, they knew a lot about how she looked based upon coins. Like that was the most, because people are like, was she hot or not, or was she smart? We have to choose
was she
one.
a 6 or a 10?
Exactly. I think it's a very important debate that we need to have.
I was gonna say I saw the Alice Neal exhibit, which is portraiture. That's painting. Like at the Met right now is like a bunch of not hot people. So.
Oh, of Egypt,
It's a
really?
thing. No, it's not Egyptian.
Oh no, I
I'm
meant
just saying.
Egyptian. No,
You think all the
Kitschy,
statues, if you're gonna go to the work to carve a statue, it should be hot.
Kitschy was saying all the Egyptians were really vain, and so they specifically, most of them were like, please make me look hot all the time.
Saw sculptures where people were not.
This was in Egypt, so like that's what I'm saying. Like a couple of them, the ones that no one really cares about except for like Egyptians, and there's like they haven't been shipped to like other museums. They're just in the museums in Egypt. There's some like kind of dumpy looking pharaoh
I think
carvings.
It's probably just the style at the time, or like.
I'm saying that she told me that, and she like learned about it there. Okay, I'm just the messenger. Don't kill me.
I don't get the point. Yeah, some people have like, they do touch-ups on their sculptures. Some people don't.
I'm just saying, if you ever get a carving of yourself, make sure to tell them to make you look hot.
Yeah, lifelike. They could just make it realistic.
I mean, yeah.
Fine. So. We did, in our research, we did find cool factoid. We'll just end with the cool factoids or whatever for everybody. So, the cool factoid we found is that it's estimated that the Egyptians were all super fit. When you see, like, even the pharaoh or, like, sculptures of people or whatever, and, like, they look, like, totally buff, they probably were all very strong and, like, buff because they were all farmers and
they were
like,
hoeing all day.
Yeah, their whole life was just manual labor for the most part.
But they ate so many carbs. It's like wild. Yeah.
And they didn't really have they didn't really do lounging. And it was actually like the weather oscillates a lot. If you've been to the desert, it gets very cold at night and like super hot during the day. Their houses were mostly like made out of clay. They didn't have central air. So, like, you just didn't stay inside during the day because you would suffocate. It was probably pretty miserable inside the house. So, you were outside under the awning or whatever. But, yeah, there was a lot of just, like, sweating, and you would just burn calories even sitting around trying to, like, stay cool. Or then at night trying to stay warm. So, yeah, they estimate that their typical daily diet was it was probably just 2 meals, like a breakfast, and then once you came in from the fields, there was, like, a huge dinner. And it was 4,000 calories, which is double the recommended diet for an American, but actually probably about what the average American eats. But we have a much more sedentary lifestyle.
Speak for yourself.
But yeah, I mean, the downside, so like very fit, they were very fit like throughout their life. You know, the downside, the reason the mortality rate's so high is that like if you got a toothache or an infection or broke something that got infected, you would die because they didn't have penicillin.
Yeah. And like their teeth were shit, so you would just like probably die of like a tooth infection.
Yeah, the high carb diet.
Carbs.
But this is kind of as we've talked about in other episodes or whatever. This is the curse of every agrarian society.
The curse of the mummy.
Yeah, that doesn't really understand how dentistry works. But what are you gonna do? Yeah. If you're dying at an average age of 40, it's not a big deal.
Yeah, exactly. Mm-hmm. As long as you look cute.
Yeah. Any other like day-to-days? We covered the cats. They did have dogs too.
Yeah.
Cats were just more appreciated because they, kill vermin.
Yeah. Yeah, I think that's pretty much it.
Yeah, they did have livestock.
Yeah. Oh, they would eat like goose or
Had
duck
milk,
sometimes.
would hunt, like, yeah, they had some poultry, they had some fish.
Yeah.
But, yeah, not a heavy meat diet. Had fresh fruits and vegetables.
Yeah.
You know, cool.
They were not eating that though. Come on. They wouldn't go through all that trouble of like making bread if they were like. I feel like they were just putting it in their dessert. They're like, well, these, you know.
No, I think they appreciated a good like crudités plate.
They definitely like lettuce.
Yeah. Yeah, you're right. I haven't heard of Egyptian dressing. Probably something with tahini and sesame seeds.
Yep. Yeah. So.
All right, you got anything you want to add?
No, that's it.
Any parting words?
That's it.
I guess we didn't talk about gold. Like, they weren't super crazy about resource extraction, but they did value gold a lot, which is why you're wearing it and why the pharaohs have a lot of gold in their tombs. But
well, yeah, but they, like I said, they would just give it to you for your afterlife. Like,
yeah,
they didn't care about it in living.
very practical people.
Yeah. They're just like, all right, we're going to put you with all this stuff. Like, they're like, I made this for you. Dead person.
I do feel to be an ancient Egyptian was probably a very zen sort of existence, because you were like, knew exactly what you had to do. You were born into it, and you farmed, and you had a very peaceful life. Like,
yeah.
For the vast majority of like the duration of Egypt.
Oh, yeah. We don't even know. Like, people are like, they're so obsessed with the dead. But it's just because, like, that's the preserved writings that we found.
Yeah, all the writings about the dead were in the tombs, which were like really well preserved.
But all the other stuff burned, so.
Yeah, the other stuff that survived.
Sorry about it.
The other stuff that survives is also the reason we know there's two scripts, right, is there's a hieroglyphic, like, priest script, and then there's the clerical script, which was on, like, the Rosetta Stone and was used to, like, inscribed on tablets or whatever.
The papyri. The funeral papyri.
This is an Egyptian, but by the way, like, one of the oldest known, like, documents is an inscription on a tablet, and someone complaining about the inferior quality of, like, the tablet, like the wheat that they got from some merchant.
Yeah, that was Babylonian.
Like, yeah, it's Babylonian, but somebody's submitting, like, a customer service complaint.
We're going to talk about, we're going to do a whole thing on the Babylonians, because they're hilarious.
All right, just saying. That is some amount of the Egyptian writing that has been found. It's just mundane stuff like that survived.
Yeah.
So think about that next time you type into a comment box on the internet.
Pretend like you had to chisel it.
This could be what people, 5,000 years from now
pretend like you have
know
to
about
chisel
our
it in stone. And then think if you'd still do it.
Yeah, like the Roman graffiti.
Like, Babylonian. Yeah, Pompeii, right?
Remember we talked about Pompeii and the, like,
okay,
intricate inscribed graffiti.
We'll also do an episode on Pompeii.
All right. Well, we have a lot of things coming up in the future.
What else do we have coming up in the future?
Tell them while I set up the speaker to play.
So we have 2 comedy shows on Friday at Secret Loft.
But they are not open to the public.
Oh, okay. So never mind. You're not invited. Sorry.
You can buy a ticket to one of our comedy shows next Friday.
Yes.
On the 23rd.
And this weekend, this Saturday, we have Secret Loft All-Stars, a tech house vaporwave awesome party with Ariel, performances by me and DJing by him, and Quarter, the Pharaoh with the Pharaohess.
Quarter and Aki.
And Leslie.
Let's go.
Cruz.
And Cruz.
And Bollywood Power Patterns.
DJ Power Patterns. So yeah, there's 6 DJs on that show.
And 1 Aerialist. And Hannah is doing our lighting too.
And shout out, Hannah, Secret Loft Visualist. And so yeah, maybe we'll see you this Saturday. Buy a ticket for that. It's on the secretloftnyc.com.
Share this pod with your friends and give us like a cute review, and you can like request too. And if it's good, we might do it. And we'll be back next week talking about something else. We don't know what it is yet.